let's get into our final grade of the day.
I'm curious where Professor Ice Queen goes here.
Wow.
I feel like
Ice baby.
I feel like
Well,
you're
definitely
coming. You're coming for Rob's neck here, Renee. Am I right or
coming for
wrong?
Rob because Caleb got the best grade of the day. Listen, I, much like Barbara Carroll, am a proud tough grader because I do hold coaches and managers to a higher standard. It is your job to make sure the team is running well. And as we mentioned, when the team's doing great, everybody's, oh, the coaches are fantastic. When the team is struggling, oh, the coaches suck. I'm just consistent of like the coaches are always under the microscope. That's why Nick Sirianni, I'm not happy with you right now. But when you look at the Phillies specifically, for Rob Thomson, obviously we know the success of what Rob Thomson has been able to accomplish in his early years. Love the fact that in his 3 seasons as Phillies manager, he has had a winning percentage of just around .575, only behind Dodgers Dave Roberts, this one, Braves Brian Snitker, and the Orioles Brandon Hyde. He also has been someone, your buddy Snitker. He's also someone that, as Dave Dombrowski mentioned, without hesitation, first part of the press conference, Rob is here to stay. So is the coaching staff. And his .575 winning percentage is the best ever for a Phillies manager. And also, of course, we know in his 3 seasons, the team World Series, NLCS, NLDS. Great. Yada, yada, yada. Love that, love that, love that. But when you look at this team and you look at some of the decision making, especially in big moments in the second half of the season, especially in the NLDS in terms of which bullpen arms are getting called out, I do put that on Rob. Yes, he cannot pitch for the guys, he cannot hit for the guys, he cannot catch for the guys. That is up to them. But it is also his job to make sure the guys are ready. As Rob Thomson's role is to prepare the team to be successful, to make sure they're as healthy as they can be, to make sure that the engine is continuing to churn along. And this team that has such a frustrating season, I am not putting all the blame on him, but I do put the blame on everyone. And Rob is not above that. So I'm giving Rob a solid C for I need to see you another year before I really consider if this is a right fit for you. And I know everybody's saying, oh, he's, most successful Phillies manager in terms of winning percentage. And we love that. Definitely was a needed, refreshing type of manager for this Phillies club when you look at, past managers and how toxic things were at times. So I love what he brings to this culture, to this clubhouse, but I think his never changing a demeanor type of vibe is contagious. And unfortunately, I think in big moments, the team does have that too much to an extent that they're lackluster, never change an expression. He's not coming out the dugout to argue calls. They're not responding well. I think if they had a manager that had a little bit more life and energy, that we could see some of these flat performances that would not be the case and it'd be better. So I actually blame him more for I like the culture he's built, but I think it's like a double-edged sword where there are aspects of this culture that to me don't have the energy, the grit, the tenacity, the hunger that I'd love to see, especially down the stretch come postseason time. So you get a C for me, Rob Thomson. Could be worse. I didn't fail him, guys, but I do think that this team has fed off of his very blase personality, which helps, but also hurts them at some other times. So it's a C.
I'm going to give him a B. First division pennant in over a decade. I think that can't be lost by the failures of some players in a playoff series. Did he make every right decision? No, probably not. Bringing in Jose Ruiz, throwing in Carlos Estevez in a spot maybe he shouldn't have. But, every manager is going to be held over the griddle on every – it's like 162 games, like, barely matter. It's like, well, a manager can win you or lose you 7 games over the course of a year. And then come playoff time, every single decision is under the biggest microscope in the world, and you question everything, trust nothing. So, I don't want the regular season to get lost. I do think Rob, as you said, historically, in terms of Phillies organizational stuff, it's really hard for me to go below a B, especially when you win the division crown. There's some numbers on Rob, 95 and 67 in 2024. I think if you told us in the beginning of the year, that Rob would lead a team to 95 wins, you would have taken it. He did, of course, lose to the Mets, but I put that more on the players than I do Rob Thomson. A great win percentage in 3 years with the team, a 20-14 postseason record, which also is pretty good. So, I put the postseason failures more on the player than I do Rob. So I think a B is a fair grade for a pennant winner.
I certainly think that it is within your right to criticize, to hold under a microscope the postseason moves, because they're always going to be that way, right? And if you looked at the Dodgers World Series run and Dave Roberts said we're going to a bullpen game and decided to pull the wrong string at the wrong time, then maybe the bullpen game isn't successful like you think it is. If Dave Roberts decides I'm taking Jack Flaherty out of this game after one inning because he clearly doesn't have his best stuff. Now, granted, you got helped a little bit by the fact that the Yankees played some really porous defense in the fifth inning, but the bullpen was excellent through 8 innings. They were, basically tasked with a really difficult, a difficult task of basically saying, you got to hold this where it's at. Jack didn't pitch very well. You got to basically shut this thing down the rest of the way. And when you have that many moving parts, whether it would have been Vesia or Banda or Gratterall or Trinan or using Walker Buehler out of the bullpen to end the game. There's so many things that could go wrong. It just all happened to go right for Dave Roberts because and he called the right shots. And you guys know I've been pretty on record of saying I don't think Dave Roberts is a particularly good manager. He was excellent in the World Series for the most part. And I think he was a part of the reason as to why he gave the Dodgers an edge over the Yankees, because I think Aaron Boone was not a help to the Yankees in that World Series at all. So it is certainly fair to put those moves under the microscope when they don't work. With that being said, especially like in game one, when Zach Wheeler exits the game with a 1-0 lead, you're turning the game over to your bullpen that has been your rock for a majority of the season. And you're going to the Jeff Hoffmans, the Matt Stroms, the Carlos Estevez, the Orion Kerkerings, those guys that have, pretty much gotten you where you need it to be. And it all like flamed out in your face at the same time. So there is much like the two coaches, there's a balancing act between you got to call the right shots, and sometimes you called the right shot and it didn't work. With all that being said, when you win 95 games, you win the division for the first time, you jump out to an excellent lead, but then you play basically 500 baseball for 90 games or so, or whatever the case may, whatever the number was exactly, and you won the division, you got a bye. You put all those things into a blender. I think it was an above average season for Rob Thomson that ended with below average decision making, and maybe it's not entirely on him. I think a B- is fair for Rob Thomson because, as Jamie said, if you would have said 95 wins at the beginning of the season, I would have been ecstatic. And especially if you would have said 95 wins, a division title, and a bye in the playoffs, I would have been over the moon. How it happened and how it ended probably puts a little bit of a knock on this. So I think a B- range is pretty fair. B to B- range is pretty fair for Rob Thomson.